Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's get straight into a conversation for tonight. We'll be speaking with Ajurin Gelale, Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. Let's assess President Tinubu's epic first year. Good evening to you, Mr. Gelale. Thanks so much for joining us on Politics Tonight.
Good evening to you, my dear sister, and good evening to our esteemed viewers.
Right, so let's start with some of the major achievements of President Tinubu's first year in office.
Well, I think what comes to mind most strongly is what happened really in the first few days. Of course, the large-scale reform of the nation's long-standing fuel subsidy regime, the reforms undertaken within the nation's foreign exchange market, which have now created conditions, by which we've been able to pay off through the Central Bank of Nigeria, pay off the backlogs of up to $7 billion plus dollars, owed to organizations both here at home and around the world. If you look at what that has meant for our ability to free up, foreign exchange to make the kinds of internal, monetary policy changes that have now driven the current situation in which you have relative stability, between the official and the parallel markets. You can see that these were difficult, and hard to enact reforms that were going to take time to materialize, and there's still a ways to go. It will improve, but the president has done that. And then, of course, we have been able to see large-scale changes with respect to presidential intervention for micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. Over 200 billion naira has gone out in the form of single-digit interest rate loans and grants to over 1 million nano businesses, in addition to single-digit interest rate loans of up to 1 billion naira given to large-scale industries, large-scale businesses across the country, particularly manufacturers. Then, of course, massive investments in critical infrastructure, right, where we're seeing work going on extensively on the standard gauge rail line that's running from Kano to Kaduna, as well as, of course, works going on in the road sector with the 700-kilometer Lagos to Calabar superhighway that's presently under construction, as well as several other interventions in all geopolitical zones of the country. We have currently over 300 federal roadways and bridges that are being reconstructed and rehabilitated and newly constructed under the leadership of this president. And that is made possible by the fact that he has brought sanity to the nation's kind of fiduciary architecture. Look, he's not stopping there. He's doing everything possible to go around the world to attract foreign direct investment, not just by selling, a policy kind of by word of mouth, but by tangibly and pragmatically implementing policy and regulatory changes within the country that would incentivize the inflow of foreign exchange and foreign direct investment. We see that manifest in obviously large increases in the rate of tax revenues accruing to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And obviously the international community is paying attention to the fact that there is a tax reform committee working assiduously over the next few months and have been working over the last few months to bring down the aggregate number of taxes in the country from approximately 63 down to what would be single digits at 9. If we can eliminate double taxation, if we can streamline taxation from the federal, state, and local government tiers of administration in the country, you're going to obviously see a situation whereby the private sector, both domestic private sector and the international private sector, are incentivized to come in with their capital. You join that with the changes we've seen within the nation's fiscal and monetary authorities, you'll now know why President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is being hailed by the investment community, not just locally through Nasima, that's been very open in talking about how the reforms of Mr. President have impacted on the level of investment interest in the economy by indigenous investors and local investors, but also by international companies who've come in and pledged more investments in oil and gas. We have nearly double digits in the billions of dollars in new deep offshore oil investments coming in as a result of the policy reforms enacted by this president. Like I always say, if I take time to detail all of what this president has done in the first year of his administration, no time on this program would be enough.
All right, so I've been talking about reforms in the oil and gas sector, and with a cursory look at the kinds of challenges in the petroleum downstream sector just before the president assumed office. How fundamentals are the steps taken by the president to address the level of criminality in the oil-producing areas? I'm asking this question because I remember one of the biggest challenges met by this administration was a dire lack of investments in the oil and gas sector. How do you think these reforms have increased competitiveness in the global oil and gas markets?
It's a great question, Jumoke, and I think the proof is in the pudding on this. If you look at where we were, at the inception of this administration, in the early days of this administration, when oil production had dipped down to as low as 1 million barrels per day, or 1.1 million barrels per day, and you recognize that we are now pushing with some relative consistency at 1.6 to 1.7 million barrels per day. That is the direct result of the policy and personnel interventions of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the oil sector. Look, you also have to point out that the National Security Advisor in the person of Malam Nuhu Ribadu has obviously done a fantastic job in the coordination of security agencies to ensure that we're able to more effectively clamp down on some of these adverse activities of some of these actors within the Niger Delta. But there is more work to do. Our plans are to push oil production over 2 million barrels per day. So we're not where we want to be yet. But anyone suggesting that there has not been absolutely significant progress recorded in the fight against oil theft and ultimately in our ability to ramp up production of crude, I think would not be fair to the truth. But look, I would also say that it goes beyond the issue of crude oil theft when you're talking about the incentivization of further investment in the oil and gas industry. You also are dealing with the extent to which we're investing in the critical infrastructure. And this is why when His Excellency Mr. President, over the course of just the last month or so, inaugurated 3 new gas handling and processing facilities to ensure that we can monetize to the great extent possible our gas resources, that we're not simply just, taking the crude gas that we're extracting and selling it in that form, which obviously does not allow you to maximize the value on kind of the return on what you can obviously attract if you're able to simply process it, refine it, add value to it, so that whether you are selling it in the local market, which is what we are pushing very hard to do, or whether you're exporting that processed gas, you're making the most money for the resource that you're producing. So this is the way to go. If you look at the pipeline infrastructure, you'd recognize that we've obviously gone to conclusive stages on the OB3 pipeline. That's obviously going to have a major impact on our ability, to transmit our resources, from industry to industry in the country in a way that would obviously create more investment attraction with respect to oil, gas production. Because if you're producing the gas and you're not able to effectively transmit it, then anyone that you're trying to get to come in to produce the gas will say, well, look, what good is stranded gas? So these are some of the interventions that Mr. President is aggressively making, which will ultimately have a large impact on the future of the Nigerian economy. But look, we also want to be clear. we are not just simply focused on the oil and gas sector. The president is diversifying quickly out of that. He's investing massively in agriculture mechanization, making sure that we can enhance our yields by not just supplying the highest quality of seeds to farmers all across our nation, but also ensuring that we are bringing in the technology, the agricultural mechanical instrumentation required to really ease the kind of the more antiquated the reliance on antiquated labor practices and farming practices by our farmers so that they can maximize their yields and get the best out of the high quality seedlings that are being provided to them across the various value chains in the food production industry. So if you look at that and you recognize that even within the President's Renewed Hope Infrastructure Development Fund, which really for the first time we have an infrastructure development fund that's not just focused on roads and bridges, which are very important, and airports and seaports, which are also very important, but is also focused on the critical infrastructure within the agricultural sector that will make a difference to the wealth of the nation and our ability to ultimately enhance food security. If you're talking about cold chain infrastructure, the ability to ensure that the current situation, let me just land on this, the current situation where you have almost 50% of production across our farmlands being spoiled before they get to the market because there's no refrigeration in our rural hamlets and farms. These are things that we can now quickly change by providing the infrastructure for example, solar powered, cold chain infrastructure within these rural communities. This is really the future of the economy that the president is currently creating.
All right, then. You've been appointed as the special envoy on climate action. Congratulations on that. But you're also the official spokesperson of the president. How do you combine these big roles?
Well, look, we have been from the beginning of our stewardship under the leadership and guidance and mentorship of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We've been very committed to the idea that we have to strengthen the institution, right? And how does that tie into the answer to your question? I fully understood that whether I'm a spokesman or not a spokesman, I will eventually leave this position, whether it's tomorrow morning, whether it's in 2027, or whether it's in 2031. Certainly, I know Mr. President's coming back for a second term because of his performance, but I don't know if the President has it in mind for me to be a spokesman in the second term. That's up to him. What I do know is that whether I leave tomorrow morning or in 2031 or whenever I leave this office, there needed to be a cultivation of institutional talent. That is the bureaucracy, information officers, making sure that whoever is on the seat as SA Media today or tomorrow, that we've cultivated the talent and we've trained them at a world-class level to be able to deliver on the skill sets required to ensure that no matter who's there, the media office is running and running well, whether it has to do with scripting, whether it has to do with anchoring and moderating events, whatever aspect of the job that would require a bureaucrat to step in, a civil servant to step in for a political appointee in the media office of the president, we've prepared them. Now, how that ties in is because we have done that work over the last 8 months preparing our staff for enhanced responsibility, more delegation of responsibility to them. I am fortunate to now be in a position where I can delegate very trustfully in very talented staff that have been cultivated over the course of the last 8 or 9 months. So I'm now in a position to delegate more responsibility to them, but certainly my eye will remain on the ball. I will still be very hands-on, but I have a staff that I can trust in. And on the climate side, I've been very fortunate to have the trust of His Excellency, Mr. President, to really, take a look at some of the best hands that Nigeria has to offer, both from locally and around the world, with respect to the expertise in renewable energy technologies, with expertise in carbon capture, technologies, with respect to, EV production and all of the other areas that have to do with the sector that I am now overseeing as the special presidential envoy on climate action. And look, we have already, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, over the course of the last several years, has done so much work already on the energy transition. We have a Nigeria Energy Transition Plan 2060, which essentially guides our steps all the way to net zero emissions by 2060. What we are now doing is ensuring that we reposition our institutions in a way that, in an unprecedented fashion, we enhance transparency so that the billions of dollars, and I want to be specific about what we're talking about. We presently have a shortfall of about $17+ billion annually of the needed climate-related financing that is required for us to be able to meet our carbon neutrality and net zero emissions target for 2060. If we don't raise this kind of money on an annual basis for investments in the relevant subsectors of the climate action sector, then we're not going to get there. And the way that you raise that kind of money is generating the kind of confidence that we have not been able to generate simply because we have not had strong institutions and credible leaders within the institutions and parastatals that are directly in charge and involved in raising this finance. So I want to, just if I may, yes.
All right, so for a proper perspective, what are the president's plans for the climate and how does that interface with economic development?
It's an important question. Unfortunately, I was just about to go there. So it's one thing to recognize that we have a series of challenges with respect to desertification, deforestation, and the need to engage in large-scale reforestation, tree planting, so that we can enhance the nation's carbon sink, which is carbon capture effectively, through, our tree planting program and ecosystem. But it's another thing entirely to recognize that we have to deal with both sides of how did we get to this point, ensuring that there is justice done on those illicit actors, some from the Far East, some indigenous actors who are colluding, for example, to cut down a lot of our timber and essentially take them out of the country illicitly to produce goods in other countries. The same way that they're doing with our solid minerals. We have to, first of all, clamp down on activity like that, but at the same time we're doing that, we have to ensure that we have built an architecture that supports the large-scale recruitment of young people engaging in tree planting all across the length and breadth of our country. That's one side of it. Another side of it is ensuring that our institutions are positioned to be made totally digital with respect to their procurement processes. I want to be clear about some of the challenges we've had. We have been operating a system in which a climate-related donor will bring millions of dollars or pounds or other forms of foreign exchange denominated currency, right? And essentially what would happen is the head of a bureaucracy will sit down, whoever that might be, and they'll essentially be calling politicians to say, look, I want you to bring this consultant, bring your briefcase NGO, we're going to give you this grant, and ultimately nothing is getting done. Or if something's getting done, it's not nearly what should be getting done. Now, what ultimately ends up happening over the medium to long term is the donors that are linked to these foreign embassies within our country and linked to foreign governments are now looking and saying, hold on a second, we've invested, tens of millions of dollars and pounds in the Nigerian climate action sphere, and we're not seeing the results. So why would we want to ramp that up? Why would we even want to continue what we're already doing? So now, in order to change that, we're going to have to digitize our procurement processes, and we're going to have to basically open up in real time a system that is basically going to run on the idea that if you have a donor coming in, let's just say for the sake of, example, we have $1 million coming in from a particular donor. We have to be able to say that this $1 million will be used to achieve a particular result that will be measured. We should be able to show Nigerians through a website or through other digital means who it is, what consultant is taking that grant, what the deliverables on that particular consultancy will yield, and then real-time progress reports as to what extent that consultant has been able to deliver on those deliverables that have been agreed in real time, not after the fact. We also have to look at how we're going to embed, officials from the EFCC and the ICPC in any department or unit that is related to any fiduciary activity within the organizations we're talking about. What I've committed to the president is that under my watch, there will be zero tolerance for corruption. This is not a typical Nigerian politician talk where we say, oh, there will be no corruption and people are stealing money. We're talking about systems that will ensure that it's not based on the word of a special envoy, based on the word of a DG. It is based on a real-time monitoring and evaluation and tracking process that is digitized and that is open. Anybody coming for consultancy now for these grants and funds that are related to the development of all of our initiatives under the climate action umbrella, they will know that they're coming in to a total open accountability system. If they're not comfortable with it, they will have to take their fraud to some other sector, but it won't be mine, and it won't be the climate action sector. We are determined to ensure that, first of all, aside from kind of bringing transparency so that you can raise the rate of fundraising required to be able to fund the level of development that we are seeking within the climate action sector, we are equally saying, look, we have to drive processes. We have to drive a strategy that is investor driven. What does that mean? We are no longer telling, donors and multilaterals to simply come and put money in a basket and trust that the Nigerian government and Nigerian government officials will just do the right thing. We're no longer telling them that. What we are now saying is we are only interested in mutually beneficial win-win investment arrangements. These are investments. We want you to bring your capital. If you're a multilateral now, like a DFI, a development finance institution, or a World Bank or an African Development Bank, we want you to pool your billions of dollars together to say, look, this is a pool of de-risking finance, so that the solar panel manufacturer somewhere in Virginia, in the United States, or somewhere in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, right, that wants to come in and establish a solar panel manufacturing facility in Nigeria, they know that there's de-risking finance available in case there's any type of shortcoming or unforeseen event that puts their investment at risk, so that they have confidence to bring that investment and bring those jobs and bring those industries and factories into the country for the benefit of the Nigerian economy and ultimately for the benefit of what we want to do in terms of climate action. So we are telling our partners globally, we're no longer in the business of asking you to come and dump $1 billion in a Nigerian bureaucracy so that we can steal half and then do whatever we want to do with the rest of it. No. Don't trust us. That's not what we're asking for. What we're asking for is for you to bring mutually beneficial investment that will drive job creation, that will drive tax revenue generation, and that will drive our ability to diversify into clean and renewable energy technology sources that are manufactured in the country. And this is why we have to give credit to the vision and commitment and leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to say, look, we're no longer going to do business as usual. We want to create a green industrial hub for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that is exactly what he's committed to. And he has trusted me and given me his confidence that I will deliver on that task, and I will not fail the president, and I will not fail this country.
Right, absolutely reassuring. But we've also heard about plans for a green industrial zone established by the president. What can you tell us about that? And also how the president is tackling these barriers?
So this is very critical because, what we have done over time, and it's always been, I think, a product of, I would call it, administrative lethargy, or you could say administrative myopia, is that we have always been comfortable with a status quo in which multilateral institutions like the World Bank, etc., very helpfully produce $2 or $3 billion, for example, right, to invest in the provision of solar panels to low income and disadvantaged communities in rural Nigeria, right? Usually sent through a rural electrification agency. Now, we know, if we're being open and honest, what the history of the Rural Electrification Agency has been with respect to, procurement fraud and diversion of public resources that should have gone to the supply and provision of some of these renewable energy technologies for the benefit of disadvantaged Nigerians across the country. That doesn't mean they haven't done any work, but it certainly does mean that the impact that could have been had over the last 20 years, we're not seeing barely a percentage of what we should be seeing. So what has happened is that these funds are essentially sent from the World Bank and DFIs in the West and in other parts of the world to China, right? China takes that money effectively because they are owning over 85-90% of the global market share of solar panel production, for example. So they end up making the money because they're the manufacturer of the solar panels that ultimately are being, imported by countries like Nigeria and other countries across the across the African continent through these World Bank funded programs. And I know I mentioned the World Bank. They're not the only one. There are several other DFIs that are essentially paying China to export solar panels to Africa at a time when African countries like Nigeria are most populous, the largest market, the largest democracy, the largest economy, does not have jobs for its youths. We're importing these things from China. So what the president is saying, look, enough is enough. We're not doing business as usual. What we're going to do now is we're going to locally manufacture these solar panels that are going to be distributed across the Federal Republic of Nigeria so that we can create millions of jobs. We can create billions of dollars in new tax revenue annually, and ultimately we can create an ecosystem in which we can satisfy our national demand for renewable energy in rural communities as well as urban settlements as well, while we also are now in a position to satisfy that demand and ultimately be a net exporter of renewable energy technologies to the rest of the continent. That is the vision of the president. It has never happened in the history of Africa. Never. So what this zone represents, the zone is called Evergreen City. And how it works is essentially it's going to be a free zone that is nuanced in the sense that it is going to run on renewable energy. So it's going to be running on solar power plants, large scale solar power plants. It's going to be running on wind turbines, wind farms that are going to be generating the power that the industries that are housed in that zone will use to be able to manufacture. Now the final leg is that we are saying to the industries that are coming into this green industrial zone that this is not for everybody. It is for industries that are specifically functioned to manufacture renewable energy technologies. So you're using renewable energy to essentially power industries that will be producing and manufacturing renewable energy technologies for onward deployment to the rest of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the rest of the West African sub-region and eventually the rest of the African continent, to the massive benefit of Nigerian workers, the Nigerian economy, and Nigerian soft power across the continent and the world. And the point that we're making is that at a time when there is extensive geopolitical competition between some of these major forces, it only makes sense to be able to diversify the manufacturing base of some of these renewable energy technologies. And that is the case we're making, and we're making good headway.
Absolutely beautiful to hear you say all of this. But let's take a break, and when we come back, we will continue this conversation. We're watching Politics